Hey, Tim Fruits from Malibu Creative. Hey, I'm doing this from home today, like many of us are. And it's something new. It's something that we haven't done before, working with our teams and working remotely. And so one of our creatives, TJ Lawson, got with someone who's been doing it for 7 years. He's been doing it with family in the house, and he has some tricks and some tips on how to communicate with your team and stay focused, how to do working from home well. So we hope you enjoy.
So, hey, Keaton, thanks for doing this to start with. Just to jump in here, tell us about who you are, what you do, kind of what your role is.
Yeah, so my name is Keaton Taylor. I'm a product designer at Envoy. We have offices in San Francisco, New York, and Kansas City. We build software for security, for visitors check-in. We help people schedule meeting rooms inside their offices. We do a lot of pretty neat things, really focused on making the whole process of working in an office a little bit less painful.
Absolutely. But you don't work in one of those offices. You work remotely, right?
I do not. Yeah, it's I get to go and hang out at the office every once in a while, but I work remotely out of Eastern Kentucky.
So, how long you been working remotely?
About 7 years, actually.
Okay. So, is it the preferred nomenclature working remotely, or is it stay at home, or is it like gym shorts wearer? What's the preferred nomenclature for those of us that are new to this?
um, I think it depends. Like a lot of people call it a distributed workforce when they want to sound fancy.
Okay.
But
It does sound fancy.
It does sound fancy. But I think of myself as a remote worker.
Okay.
And I try I try really hard not to be a gym shorts wearer on
Yeah.
office time.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. I have to, if I don't put on real clothes, I have a hard time feeling like I'm doing real work. And I don't know why.
100%.
Yeah, I don't know why that is in my brain, but I can definitely feel that. Like I have to get dressed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a routine,
Yeah.
when you feel like um, you're building a routine and you have like steps to go through, I think it really builds up the kind of the path to getting your day started. I think
Okay.
that's part of it psychologically.
Okay. Absolutely. So what is you? So tell me about why you started doing this. Like, why did you start working remotely? You've been doing it for 7 years,
Yeah,
and you don't live alone in Eastern Kentucky. So tell me
I do
about
not.
that.
Yeah, so I live in a house with six other people. Four of those other people are small children. We have a 17-month-old, which a lot of people razz me and tell me that baby's two. Just let it go. But we have a 17-month-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and then two older folks, some in-laws that I live with.
Okay, absolutely. Is it hard working with kids around? Like, has it been a challenge? Is it because I'm assuming that means you kind of started and you already had kids, and so you've kind of
Right.
only ever known that.
Yeah, I worked in offices earlier in my career, which was great. I have nothing but good things to say about working in an office. Um, the tide kind of shifted for me though, like when you start to realize how much you're losing going to an office as far as just interaction with kids. And so I actually fell into working remotely accidentally. It wasn't something that I went out looking for.
Okay.
I left a job in 2012, I think, and just kind of put out there into the ether that I was looking for something. And just completely by chance, somebody who I had worked with before, like tangentially, not even working directly with them, was looking for a web designer, and
Okay.
just reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And I was, because we had kids and I needed a job,
Yeah.
and so he already had two other people working remotely on his team, and so he just brought me in and kind of shoved me the ropes, and so um so yeah, it wasn't necessarily a choice to jump into remote working, but it has been a choice to kind of keep with that, and it's more or less just because we keep having more kids.
Yeah.
I feel like if we're done now, then eventually going to an office is going to feel a lot better. I mean, the youngest
Yeah.
one, like, she walks and she basically feeds herself, so there are still
I mean,
some
that's definitely two
milestones.
then.
Yeah, she's definitely two. But yeah, so there, at some point there's, you know, at some point you have to look at career and everything else and think about what comes next. But for the time being, working remotely is great, and I'm really enjoying, like, being around to see all of the messes that they make.
Absolutely. So what's been like the biggest kind of struggle? There's both advantages as you're talking about, like getting
Mhm.
to see the kids, getting to be there. So
Yeah.
what's the biggest like struggle for you with working remotely, or is it just always smooth sailing? How's that for you?
That's right, TJ. It's great. Every day there are no problems.
Every day is always perfect.
Every day is a beach. Now it's, there are several things that can be hard. If you don't have if you don't have a good community around you, then remote work can feel very, very lonely,
Okay.
because you are, and we're in, like, a very different situation right now,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, when you're working remotely, you're talking to a lot of your coworkers through Slack, or through email, or via Zoom, or Hangouts, or whatever you're using, or Meet, whatever it's called now.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so there's this potential for all of your social interaction to become this thing where you're working, and so you're constantly talking to these people, and it's very easy to get into a rut where you're talking to those people constantly and you're not getting out and being a part of a community, and so that kind of
Okay.
loneliness can set in. Communication is always a struggle because
Yeah.
you don't have that sort of water cooler interaction with people that you would
Yeah.
have inside of an office. um, Building meaningful relationships, like, these are all things that a really good leadership team will build a company around doing these things when they have to go remote.
Okay.
um, so over communicating everything consistently is
Yeah.
really, really important. um, some of the other things that are, like, kind of strange things that you maybe wouldn't expect to be struggles, are, like, making sure that you have time to ramp up to your workday.
Okay.
Like,
We
when you go to an office, right, you're commuting most of the time. You have to get in a car and drive to an office, and that's
okay.
kind of a
Yeah.
ramp up time. And you have those few moments to be able to listen to a podcast, or listen to the radio, or just sit in silence because you have children and you want, for 10 seconds, someone not to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
And so you have kind of this ramp up time. Working remotely, one of the things that I have had to kind of build into my schedule is, before I ever start working, I use Headspace for
Okay.
meditation. So most days, depending on, like, workload and other things, how many kids have broken something, I usually go to my office, spend anywhere between 5 and 10 or 15 minutes working on um, just, like, being still and
Okay.
doing meditation, and just kind of clearing my head and
Yeah.
getting into a space where I'm ready. The kind of things that I would be doing were I, like, driving to work.
Okay. So you kind of using that as like a prep thing, because I know, like, even when I go to the office, like I come in, I get my laptop out, I get my cords
Mhm.
all set up, like I get myself all prepped, I go get a glass of water, like
Yeah,
I get my whole space ready to work. And it's a short commute for me. It's only about 10 minutes, but
sure.
it's there's this like s- consistency to that that's now gone. Like I'm
Yeah.
just all right. walking these 3 steps, into the guest room that's now the office,
Right.
and trying to figure that out. And so it's definitely like I can see how that I didn't even thought about that as a part of the ritual that I need to start building in here. But I
Yeah,
definitely can see how that makes it easier to feel like you're
totally.
transitioning from family to work.
Yeah. And that's, that's what we talked about earlier, is that idea of consistency and routine. Like when you build a routine into your day, especially when you're in a situation where you have to work from home, especially if it's a situation where you're not choosing to work from home,
Right.
but you have to work from home. I think that it's super important to build in a consistent schedule so that um, not just you. I mean, you have to set expectations with everyone else that you live with if you live with other people as well.
Okay.
So to be able to say like, hey, when 9 o'clock rolls around, one way or another, like I need to be ready and in the office. Well, setting that expectation with your partner or your roommates or whatever, or like I need to be logging in and sitting at the kitchen table, and like I need to do that at 9 a.m. Like setting those expectations with the people around you is going to be really important to start to build like what does that routine look like, and it looks different
Okay.
for a lot of people.
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Absolutely. So how do you you said something earlier that really struck me, that it's a huge part of the culture in this work from home environment, especially for those of us that are new to it,
Mhm.
is stems from leadership,
Yeah.
and how that's structured. And especially like I know you're pretty active on Twitter with a lot of other folks that work remotely. What have you
Sure.
seen that are like really best practices, especially for
Mhm.
those leaders who are new to this, whose team is kind of being thrust upon them, especially like here in Wichita where we're at, we have a 30-day shelter in place order. So
Right.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
people who are now forced into this, and schools have closed, so they're now
Yeah.
navigating having there's no there's nothing to do with the kids, and we don't know
Right.
exactly what the online learning environment's going to look like for our kids who are in the school system. And so that's one of the things that's still in flux here. But especially for those people who are leaders, what's that's going to look like? Like, what are the best practices, and what are some like really common pitfalls or things that you've seen and you've heard from other people that are like leaders have done that have made it more isolating, have made it more difficult? So what are some best practices? What are some pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah. So honestly, like first and foremost, I think it's really important to say, and I think that people, it's hard to tell because I'm in kind of the tech bubble to some
Yeah.
extent. I'm not in Eastern Kentucky, but in general,
Yeah.
and so I really like the one thing that I would urge any leader at any level in any organization to be conscious of is that this is not normal,
Okay.
and this is not a situation where we can look at what's happening in the world and what's happening in our homes and say your productivity will 1,000% be exactly the same as it would be any
I'm
other
in the middle of
time.
something. Can I help you?
Um, I need to lie off my bed.
Okay, well, go ask Jed to help you. Okay. Speaking of one of the tiny humans in my house.
Exactly. But yeah, so it's really important. I think that every single person in leadership at every single level, at every company that's going through this right now, needs to acknowledge with all of the people that they're working with that this is not normal.
Mhm.
This is not a situation like for me where I chose to work remotely and this is what I'm doing and I have a routine set up and this is
Yeah.
great, and so it helps me to get things done. We're not in that situation for most people, and I think it's on leadership to acknowledge that and to be able to say like, look, we all have things we have to get done. We have to make sure that these things do get done, but at the end of the
Okay.
day, like this isn't normal, and we can't have an expectation that everyone is going to be working at the same capacity that they would be at an office. I think
Okay.
first and foremost, that's something that has to be put out there. Good leadership will
Yeah.
recognize that and say that and make
Okay.
sure there's not some sort of expectation that you're still drilling out the same 40 hours that you would be any other time. I think that's
Okay.
that's an unfair and unreasonable, definitely unrealistic expectation, especially for
Okay.
people who have kids. The other things I'd say, like as far as pitfalls, things like that go, I have seen, especially on LinkedIn and through conversations with people who are not part of the tech industry,
Yeah.
or even the design industry at large, or engineering too. There's this feeling for some people like it's a trust issue. Like,
Okay.
I don't know how I can make sure people are getting these things done. And that's one of two things to me. To me,
Okay.
that's either you have not hired a good team.
Okay.
You have hired people that you can't trust, and that's a problem that stems like top down, or you are looking at a situation where the output becomes more important than the people.
Yeah.
And I think both of those things situationally um, can be just facts that you have to live with.
Yeah. It has to kind of wrestle with, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just sometimes you have to live with that. But when we're in a situation like this, I think one of the big pitfalls is, um, trust people.
Okay.
Uh, if you have people who are on your team and you've hired them and they're doing the work, just on a leadership level, just trust people to understand what they have to get done and to communicate that information. If it's not going to get done,
Yeah.
just make sure that you're building a culture where that can be said, where
Okay.
people can talk about what it is that they're working on. Some of the other things that I think are really important, are, you know, it's really easy to want to inundate people with meetings in
Yeah.
this kind of situation. Um,
Absolutely.
a lot of times a Slack message can do, or an email can do just as much as a meeting could.
Yeah.
And not all communication has to be synchronous. Like, we can have asynchronous communication and I can
Okay.
get back to you in an hour and the world is not going to crumble. In most situations, like, obviously there are things that are important and we need to have a call or we need to have a
Right.
meeting. But I think it's important to build asynchronous communication into the workflow, especially now for this situation that's just straight up not normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a weird environment. I think that's one of the challenges of like, um, yeah, I think it's one of the challenges for a lot of businesses is pivoting from, you know, we hire you for a period of time
Mhm.
to we hire you to help accomplish these projects. Like that's a very
Yep.
different way of approaching things. And I know for your industry, it's always been that way, but it's also
Right.
it's a pivot for a lot of businesses and a lot of leaders to try to shift that thinking. So I can see how that would make a
Absolutely.
difference.
Y-
Um,
Yeah. And again, like, this isn't a normal situation. So some of this, some of this is applicable and some of it isn't.
yeah.
Like, this isn't just like you read Rework, and which
Okay.
Rework is a book by Jason Fried, who runs a company called Basecamp. They've always been remote. They're kind of at the forefront of thinking of how remote work um, works.
Okay. And
Um,
so their whole team is remote, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
their entire company is remote. They have a small office in Chicago where a
Okay.
few people work, but they encourage everyone on their team to work out of the office.
Okay.
So it's not a situation where your boss went out, read a book, and was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like, I can save, you know, probably tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year
Yeah.
if I didn't have a centrally located office that I'm paying rent for, and I spent that money to outfit our team with
Yeah. Yeah.
standing desks and microphones." You know, it's not that situation. It's, oh, we can't get close to other people because everyone might die. So
Yeah.
there's like, there's like a
Yeah.
very different feel to those two things.
Absolutely.
But I would encourage new, like, in this new paradigm, I would encourage people to read Rework. Um,
Okay.
it's a really interesting, and at times maybe too dogmatic approach to what remote work looks like, but it does give a lot of really good frameworks um, for leadership who are
Okay.
going into and in that situation already.
That totally makes sense to have, especially for leaders who are trying to navigate this, having somebody who's been who's been on the forefront of that would be a really helpful roadmap for kind of figuring out what this looks like. Because yeah, I mean, we don't know how long it is, how long this is going to stay. Like we just don't have a timeline. So what other is there any like just full blown pieces of equipment, like anything that you have that you're like, man, this is made working like this more manageable, like you know, especially something that you bought that you're like, I probably don't need that, and then you bought it, you're like, I should have done this years ago.
So this is number one. Like, so I tell this story every time I talk about this mic because I think it's just hilarious. So, guy I was working with, the guy who gave me my first remote job, guy named Marcus Netto. What up, Marcus?
Oh man, Marcus has been hugely helpful to me as well. So Marcus is good.
He's incredible. He's incredible. So Marcus, we got off of a call with a client, and Marcus was like, "Hey, can we jump into a meeting?" And so I did, and he's like, "Hey, you got a package showing up at your house in a couple of days. It's probably 2 boxes, maybe 3, but just a heads up. I sent you some stuff because your iPhone headphones that you've got plugged into your laptop, your mic is just rubbing on your beard, and it's just, you know, it's either I send you a mic and a boom, or we're gonna have to talk about like getting you a budget for going to a barber more often." And I don't think that's actually what he said, but it was something akin to that.
Okay.
But it was a very sweet gesture, and I still use the same mic from 6 years ago. It's a blue Yeti USB, and I've got the shock mount for it and a Rode PS1 or PS1. I can't remember which one, but it's a Rode boom, and total, like all of this setup is maybe $250. I would say between you probably get it for cheaper, something similar to this. But having that USB mic has been a game changer. Having
you sound great. It's got that strong strong Roman Mars vibe going on.
That's the only thing I've ever wanted to hear from anyone about this microphone. So thank you. And then noise canceling headphones. Because, you know, especially if you're only using them in the office, my opinion, and this is just me, and partially because I'm cheap, is that they don't have to be like, you don't have to go out and buy Bose QC35s, and that's like what you're working with. I got these for $15 or $20. They're like iHome brand. There's nothing super impressive about them. I have other headphones that I have like Bose, the Bose Sound Sport that I use whenever
the backup headphones.
Well, and then I also have AirPods that I use sometimes too. But like having a good noise canceling over ear headphones, having those, especially when you have people walking around and you have kids who are doing things, it's really, really helpful to just let you focus in on whatever it is you're doing. Standing desk has been super incredible for me. You know, it's had a big effect on the way that I can pace and anxiously pace and think about things and not have to worry about like, getting up and down. And standing desks, the prices on them have come down just so far over the last several years. And
I miss my standing desk. I had one at the office, and now I'm just got this little folding table that I'm using in the back office, and it's just not the same.
And I think that's really, those are the things to me that are crazy important. You know, getting nice monitors. I have too many monitors, but right now I have 2 of them set up. And that's been a game changer for me, to be able to have information on one screen and work on another screen, you know, to be able to compare documents or whatever it is that I'm doing. So I would say the biggest thing is find the things that make your setup comfortable, and figure out like what in that world works for you. And just double down on what that looks like. Like if you work at a desk that is a sitting desk and that's what you like and that's what works for you, you know, look into, you can get used Herman Miller desk chairs for a couple $100s on eBay.
Okay.
They have, really look for something that has good lumbar support. If you're using
Yeah.
a standing desk, getting a pad to stand on is incredibly important. If you don't take a lot of meetings,
Yeah.
save that $250 and put it into something else.
Okay.
I think it's very like, it's such a personal thing. Like, what does my setup look like? But I think
Yeah.
for me, for working remotely for several years, having this mic that has good audio and makes me sound clear when I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking, and um, having the standing desk and a good coffee mug is also super
Okay.
important. Like, just I've been going back and forth. I've got like an insulated mug that my wife got me, and then this Envoy branded mug from
It's a great looking
Near.
cup.
It's pretty awesome. But it's also, it's double wall stainless steel,
Yeah.
so my coffee's always warm. Um, Also big water bottle.
Okay.
Like, this doesn't look that big because my hands are huge, but this is like 40 ounces. And it's crazy important because you will forget to eat, you will forget to drink water. That stuff it's just part and parcel of this kind of new paradigm that you're working from.
Okay, absolutely. Especially like if somebody has some specific questions of like they want to ask somebody who's a veteran, especially because you guys, you've done this for years. You've got littles at home. You guys homeschool as well, so your kids are kind of always around. Like, you guys have navigated. You've really had to work out the kinks on this.
Sure.
Where are some places like if somebody wanted to ask you a question, like, is there somewhere they could follow you on social? Is there something that
Sure.
you could kind of point them to? Is like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I'm on Twitter, probably too much.
Okay.
And that's just part of like an industry thing for me mostly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I'm on Twitter. I'm at Keaton_Taylor.
Okay.
And then LinkedIn, I'm not active like posting on LinkedIn, but I look at LinkedIn a lot.
Okay.
Like, I
I do
don't
too.
have a good reason for that, but I do.
I don't know what the team at LinkedIn has done over the last couple of
Mhm.
years, but it was like, it's become one of my preferred platforms for interacting with people.
It's really interesting. They've done some really interesting things with the platform that I really like.
Yeah.
Like, the whole process of just writing something on their platform, to me, is very interesting. They've built this way that it automatically parses text into hashtags that you're able to
Okay.
use, and I think that's really interesting because it gives you the ability to kind of continually mark what it is you're talking about so other people can find it. I have good things to say about LinkedIn.
Yeah, they've done a great job. Shout out to LinkedIn. They've done a great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks for your time today. That's super helpful. I know, especially like there's a lot of us that are navigating this world for the first time, and I suspect that, in 30 to 90 days, when hopefully some of the dust begins to settle here and we see the curve starting to drop, and that's praying that that's what happens.
Yeah.
That this is going to change the way some of us work and interact. Like, I think it's going to be a
Yeah.
interesting experiment we're all on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I thank you. I mean, I appreciate you thinking of me, and I'm always excited to talk shop. So
Awesome,
good.
man. Well, thanks so much. We'll keep in touch. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye bye.